You're listening to Change Your POV Podcast, episode 194.
Hopefully my wife's not listening, but my wife and kids went out of town. I was like, you know what, we've got all this shit from Germany that we never unpacked. I'm just going to throw it all away, take it to the dump. And for some reason, I opened up one box, and I found an old journal that an old sergeant major made me keep, and started kind of connecting the dots to my military career to business decisions I made recently.
Change Your POV Podcast Network is dedicated to helping veterans become just as successful out of uniform as we were when we were in. Our next guest lands squarely on this side of the fence as well. A father, a leader, an author, and a veteran himself, we are very happy to bring onto the show Nick Ripplinger. Nick's purpose is to help leaders learn, grow, share, and become the best leaders they can be, with a special focus on veterans in transition. Leadership, similar to any skill, is one that we, as leaders, must seek to improve. Our skills can be improved and should be improved every day so we can provide more value to our team. As we learn and grow, we need to share our knowledge with each other as well. In a nutshell, Nick believes that leaders have one of the most important responsibilities in life and in business. And this responsibility must be taken seriously by doing everything we can to become better and more knowledgeable leaders. Please help me welcome Nick to the show, author of Frontline Leadership, which you're going to hear a whole lot about. I'm very excited about this discussion. Hello, folks, and welcome to Change Your POV Podcast. I am your stellar host, Eddie Lazary.
More than stellar host, Bennett Tanton.
And today, we are on the phone with Nick Ripplinger. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, you guys?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, we already kind of prefaced this conversation a little bit at the beginning here, some of which may be included in the final cut, and some of it may not. We'll determine that later. But we're talking about Nick. Sorry, Rick.
I love it.
Nick is an author.
I've been called a lot worse.
Nick is an author of a book called Frontline Leadership, which we're going to get into in a minute. We're going to hear about his background, his story, his military history a little bit. But what we really want to kind of talk about here is this vacuum, I think. This disparity between the amount of information provided to the veteran community to aid in career development and military separation, and the struggling volume of veterans that are actually still struggling. So what I'm saying is, you would think that with as many folks as struggling to transition and as much information that's available to everybody out there about this very thing, you would think that there would be some leveling of the playing field, as it were, right? There would be a lot more assistance being yielded if this information was doing what it claims to do. And I think, Nick, you see this in what you do with your experience thus far, as have we. And so we kind of want to talk about it. So before we get into too much of that detail, give us a brief kind of a background in your military history and kind of what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I joined right out of high school because I had way too much fun in high school, and college wasn't really an option for me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Went off and enlisted, and had the time of my life. I ended up serving exactly 7 years to the day before being medically retired from an incident that happened in Iraq. I had the privilege of doing some pretty cool stuff and working protective services for NATO, which I think kind of helped gear me for the transition.
Now, you're in the Army, right?
Yeah.
And what was your MOS?
I came in as a military police officer, and then I went active duty as a truck driver.
Okay. So where at in Iraq were you?
First time I was down in Nasiriyah, the second time I was up in Tikrit.
And what years?
The first time was 05, 06, and then the second time was 08, 09.
So we kind of had some overlapping time then. I think I was in Baghdad from 04 to 05. So Nasiriyah, now is that just north of Navistar?
I believe so. It's right off Tampa, kind of south, down towards Kuwait.
Got it. Yeah. So as you're going from south to north, You end up crossing the border there, right at Navistar, I think is the name of it, and then you continue on. You end up through where you were at, and then keep going north into Baghdad. Is that right?
My geography is correct. I think that's pretty close.
All right. So there's probably many guys out there like, bullshit, I got 7 deployments. That's not the way it is. So you can correct us later. But very cool, man. Well, welcome to the show, sir. And let's get into talking about your book and why you created it. The book, Frontline Leadership, Applying Military Strategies to Everyday Business. So give us an overview of what the book is. But more than that, I want to know why it was created or what brought you to the point where you felt this book needed to be written.
Absolutely. So the book is just a series of short stories from my military career that probably honestly most veterans can relate to, and just kind of pulling those lessons learned and how you can apply those to business. And like we kind of talked about before the show, there's so many books out there and so many resources, but I just wanted to kind of create a fun, easy to read book where you can kind of reflect on your time in the military, really think about what you learned from those experiences, and then translate it into how you can apply it to business.
So give us one of those short stories, if you would, sir.
Yeah, so the first chapter, to ruin it for everybody, is
nice.
About basic training. It talks about the leadership style that's used in basic training. I'm not trying to knock the military at all, but screaming and yelling does not work at the corporate world like it does in the military. And that's kind of like my first real experience with leadership in my life, was thinking back to basic training and how they were able to get us to do A, B, and C through screaming and yelling. And then kind of reflect later on in my career how I was never a screaming, yelling type NCO, but just kind of comparing those two philosophies to still accomplish the same mission.
Now, I know a lot of people that get out of the military and they move into the civilian sector and they adopt that same methodology of screaming, yelling, and they quickly realize that this isn't something that's conducive to successful.
They fired,
right?
I was about as stubborn as they came when I came into the military, and when I was getting screamed and yelled at for holding my tray wrong or doing whatever wrong, like I just tune it out and just do push-ups. Like I had no clue what they were screaming and yelling about, so their message was not really coming across.
It wasn't being received by you. Yes, because
different types of learning, right?
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and you just have to adjust, like in your leadership skills, to the people that you're leading. Because some people you might have to scream and yell at, other people you might have to kind of coddle a little bit, and people in between.
Yes, I totally agree with that, man. So kind of what brought on this book to begin with?
So hopefully my wife's not listening, but my wife and kids went out of town. I was like, we've got all this shit from Germany that we never unpacked. I'm just going to throw it all away, take it to the dump. And for some reason, I opened up one box, and I found an old journal that an old sergeant major made me keep, and started kind of connecting the dots to my military career to business decisions I made recently. And that's kind of the aha moment that, I don't ever reference my MBA or my bachelor's degree or anything like that in business, really. To be honest, it's all life experiences, whether from past business deals or from, mostly my military. It's kind of where I feel like I learned everything as an adult.
So it's the book is really written on your actual experience.
Yeah, for the most part, mine are soldiers.
Not so much theory.
No, these are all just like, stories when we sent somebody to go get grid squares and what we learned from that. Don't waste people's time.
Yes.
So it's all stuff that...
Go find some shoreline, private.
Exactly. Blinker fluid or something that... I mean, we've all had these experiences, right. No matter, what branch you served in. There's all sorts of, stupid games that we played on privates, but those are actually applicable in the real world and in leadership and growing a team. And
so there's a lot of things that don't transfer, right? That translate. Let's just say there's a lot of things that translate poorly from the military into the civilian world, but yet there's a lot of things that transfers very well that you can leverage as a veteran in the civilian sector. Now, the problem becomes a lot of folks, myself included, has a difficult time differentiating between what things transfer well and which ones don't. So for those that maybe find themselves in that particular situation, what do you recommend?
I recommend just finding a way to tell your story. We all have these great experiences and stories, but they can translate to business if you tell the story the right way. Nobody really cares how many awards you had, but what was the meaning? What did you get that award for? What did you do to differentiate yourself from the rest of your peers to receive that award, and how can you apply that to their organization?
Yeah,
I don't know, Eddie. He's kind of talking common sense, man.
Yeah, kind of common sense, man. Yeah, like I was telling Bennett, Nick, that you and I had already had a conversation on the phone a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, and it was actually over lunch, sitting in my car talking to you, and we had a great conversation. And so, yeah, you and I connect on many levels about this common sense stuff. The difficult part, though, that I find is oftentimes, I don't know about you, but oftentimes I learn the best when I make my own mistakes. And there's a lot of people out there that are just hell-bent on making their own mistakes. And unfortunately, when you're making your own mistakes in corporate, that, sometimes leads to, being fired or, being demoted or whatever the case may be within your company. And it just doesn't work out very well. Because unlike the military, it's much easier to just fire somebody or lay them off in the civilian sector. You can still do that in the military, and it's done all the time, chaptering people out. But there is a lot more red tape involved with, you can't just be like, all right, dude, you're done. There's a process to that. And I think a lot of people kind of take advantage of that lengthy process in the military. So when they get out, they believe they have multiple chances in order to correct themselves or right themselves before they find themselves in the unemployment line. And that just sometimes isn't the case.
No, I mean, the military is, like the king of second chances, and the business world, unfortunately, is not. You make one simple mistake, or not simple, but depending on what mistake it is, it could, end in termination right there on the spot. And I guess that's the one thing that the military does a lot better than the corporate world is grooming and mentoring to hopefully try to prevent those mistakes. I mean, as dumb as it sounds, having those safety briefs every Friday, I mean, they were there for a reason, right? Because somebody the week before did something stupid, and it's not advertised as much. I think the military is more open to talking about mistakes and learning from them, or trying to learn from them in most cases, where the corporate world is so much trial and error, and depending on what you decide could have a great impact on your future or detrimental one.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to start instituting push-ups. Like in the corporate world. Like,
no way.
I've been out a little too long for that.
No, yeah, but you know what I'm saying, though? You know what I'm saying. So it's like the double, the second, the third, the fourth, the 10th, the 100th freaking chance of you fucking up in the military will get you, you're digging foxholes all weekend. Mm-hmm. This is corrective training, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe you'll get a guy that it resonates with.
Right.
Eddie told a great story in one of our episodes, the cigarette butt story.
Oh, yes.
What episode is that?
I don't even remember now.
Damn it. Well, we have to put it in. So either way, great episode. But you learned a valuable lesson from that.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily happen in the corporate world.
No, it doesn't.
Maybe. So it's just got me thinking. That's all. I'm sorry, guys. I'm kind of thinking out loud. Because, like Nick, we've explained, my job is so damn frustrating.
Oh, I bet.
And I'm pissed off today. I'm just pissed. So, I come into this really just what in the hell? And really, you got to put most of it on the vets that we're dealing with. You do. But it's one of those things, there's just got to be a better freaking way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we're failing on so many levels. I mean, and you can put personal responsibility on the top of the list, but at the end of the day, when a veteran has to literally run a 400-meter hurdles just to do anything, there's a problem with that. I mean, I like to give veterans the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times you can't, because there are always that 10%, like we say, right?
Absolutely.
But with that being said, there is a lot of times when the system just fails. I mean, a lot. And it's I'm so just frustrated on how and what we do. I mean, we just keep pushing forward. I get it. Mm-hmm. I just want there to be more. There's so much fluff out there, fluff and bullshit that just does nobody any good except for distract them. Shiny object syndrome, squirrely bastards that freaking do work that really just doesn't do anything. And from what I'm hearing, your book doesn't sound like one of those. I'm just going to say that, because I'm a big one on the theorem of things. If you haven't actually practiced it, come on. I went to college for that shit. I didn't know what I mean.
No, I totally get it. And Eddie and I were talking on our phone call about a month ago or whenever it was about, I got the opportunity to speak on a military base, and, you know, I don't know, a 30-year service staff sergeant or so came to me with his resume, and it was 5 pages long. I was like, honestly, dude, I will not look at this.
Dude, actually,
you're asking my honest opinion.
You told me that story, Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to look, like, I'll help you redline it right now because that's what I'm here to do, is here to help you and explain to you what I'm personally looking for in a resume. But if all you've done is the military, I expect a 1-page resume, maybe a 2 if you're, you know, a major or above, or E7 and above. But for the most part, like, keep it simple. And the head of the transition unit came over and was arguing with me, like, hey, I spent 2 weeks working with that, you know, soldier on his resume. I'm like, sorry, dude, you failed him, because
you're
this
fucking
came across
wrong.
my deck. I'm not reading 5 pages. I'm sorry, it's going straight to the do not consider pile. And so I asked him his background, and he was the recently retired garrison sergeant major of that base, the top enlisted dude.
Exactly.
In transition to that, dude, you have never transitioned from anything in your life. You just work in the building next door and wear a suit instead of, you know, ACUs or whatever they're calling the new uniforms now.
Right.
It's like, you've never transitioned. How are you supposed to help this guy who's going out to the real world because he's not buddy-buddy with whoever was hiring for that position? That is beyond frustrating to me. Besides, I don't like being told I'm wrong. And then on 2, this guy can't prove that I'm wrong, or I hired people.
Yeah, exactly. You hire people for a living.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I just, as smart as everyone thinks they are in the military, when it comes to the TAPs and the SAPs and all the other apps and shit that they throw at guys on their way getting out, they really are fucking stupid. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. I'm sorry. I'm so sick of, like, biting my tongue on this shit, Eddie. You and I talked about this.
Go for it, man.
I'm just fucking sick and tired of it, man.
Yeah.
I know
just like you said, because I've met another guy who's a transition. He was in charge of TAPs. This guy he's a retired gunnery sergeant, went straight from being a gunny to running TAPs. What the fuck do you know about transitioning?
Exactly.
Nothing. 0% of nothing. That's what
I transitioned from Germany, and we had a spouse running the TAPS program who's been a military spouse her whole life. I think her husband was like a 1-star or something.
Right.
But so she's like, all right, pair up and interview each other. So I'm sitting there interviewing some Special Forces Sergeant Major who's been in Special Forces for 30 years. I've been in for 7 years, you know, doing PSD missions. And neither one of us know what the hell anybody's going to ever ask in an interview. So we just kind of bullshitted for 30 minutes, then we swapped and bullshitted some more, and then called it a day and went home. Like, total waste of our time.
Check the block, right?
It was like a bad episode of, like, speed dating or some shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Speed networking.
So let me ask you, Nick, let's get into resumes here for a minute. This is kind of a little bit my forte. This is kind of something that I dabble in quite a bit. I don't know if you're familiar with the mentoring platform called Veterati.
I am.
Okay.
I'm on there if anybody wants to find me.
Oh, there you go. Very cool.
Love to help you out.
I will add your personal link, your profile link in the show notes page for this episode. Bennett and I are both mentors on Veterati, and we're actually mentees as well, because I wanted to see the other side of things. We're not going to get into that right now, but so one of the things that I help folks with when they sign up to get some mentoring from me, and that's with resume and translating military experience into civilian terminology. So I've got a lot of experience with resumes. I was hiring manager, did a lot of interviews, reviewed a lot of resumes, and there's a lot of... So this is what I've found, and you can tell me what your experience is. What I found is people that specialize in the area of resume writing, they think it's like this. They want to keep it like this secret society where, like, they want to make it sound more complicated than it really is, because it's kind of like taxes. Remember back in the day,
job security.
Yeah, remember back in the day when there was no way anybody could ever do their taxes on their own, right? You had to go to.
That's still true for me.
Oh, okay. Well, so there was no these, online tax. What do you call those? Where you get on TurboTax and things like that, right?
Yeah, it walks you step by step.
Yeah. Back in the day, you had
things like that.
Yeah, back in the day, you had to go to an actual, tax, person, whatever, attorney or adjuster or whatever the hell they called them back in the day.
CPA.
Yeah, CPA, right? In order to do file your taxes, but now they've cracked open the Kraken and said, oh, folks, it's not that difficult. It really isn't. Like, most Americans can download a free version of TurboTax, follow the step-by-step instructions, and be
and even itemize.
Yeah, and even itemize and be fairly successful at filing their own taxes. So, and then all of a sudden, there are still people that need to go for other reasons because they own a business or something like that. But for the most part, if you are just a single homeowner or a single earner or whatever, and you're filing whatever, it's pretty simple. Well, the resume is really kind of no different, right? We're moving in. We're going from the stage of everybody that's in the resume writing industry in this oh my God, there's no way you could write your own resume and do it effectively. You need to hire me to write your resume for you if you're going to have a chance in this, out there in the market to find a good paying job, on and on and on, right? Well, the fact of the matter is, resume writing is really not that difficult. If you know what the other person is looking for in your resume, and B, check your ego at the door, because your resume is about the reader, not about you. Communication is done by the listener, people. Communication is done by the listener. And in this case, the listener is whoever's reading your resume. And if you're not talking to them, if you're not communicating to them, and you're just writing a resume for yourself, then that's as far as your resume is going to get, is with yourself. So anyway.
And you said something very powerful right there about checking your ego, because the resume is not about you.
Right.
I hope listeners are getting that. That's huge.
So when you help with, we can go back and forth here, but what are some common things that you see with people that are struggling with their resume? Just some simple things that you and I consider simple, but people listening to this might not realize.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, I don't want your whole life story in a resume. If I'm looking at your resume, I want a snapshot of the skills that we're actually hiring against. So do a little bit of research up front and tailor your resume to every job you apply for. Don't have a cookie cutter one.
Yep.
Let me have another question. How important is a cover letter?
In my opinion, I think I read them. I know a lot of other people don't. So I say it's honestly 50-50 depending on who you're applying to.
But like a good cover letter, would it change? Would it change the game a little bit, you think? I think personalized, kind of good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good cover letter that I receive, I'm probably going to spend an extra 15 to 30 seconds on your resume when I look at it.
Yeah.
Which is a
lifetime.
About double.
Yeah,
it's about double what I'd usually spend on one.
If I pick up a resume and it says "to whom it may concern," and I realize it's a canned cover letter that could fit any job, I don't even waste my time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I mean, really, guys, and this is just a tidbit of info from me and my experience with this. Probably 85% of all job postings leave a contact name and number. At the very least, write the cover letter to that person. Because that's probably who's in charge of they're at least in charge of who sees your resume.
Absolutely. So, and honestly, every recruiter is on LinkedIn. So if you're applying for a job at ABC, go to ABC and figure out who their recruiter is.
Right.
Find them on LinkedIn. It's going to take you 5 minutes to figure out, oh, this person is the recruiting manager.
Right.
So even if it's not posted, do that tiny little bit of legwork up front. We'll get you noticed.
I had this, the true story. I was interviewing for a position, and this lady comes in, and we had these. There was like 3 or 4 little offices right off of the lobby of the building that I worked at, and so we didn't have to actually bring candidates into the closed facility to do interviewing. We could do it all essentially right there in the lobby. And there was, it's a rather good-sized lobby. There's couches and TVs, and it's like a large doctor's office, I guess. And so we would basically rack up several, interviews back to back, and we, held pretty close, pretty tight to the timeline. But it was funny because we were just bringing people in one after another. And as one lady comes in, she sits down, and the first thing I asked is if she's got a copy of her resume. I've got a copy. But I always ask the candidate if they have a copy of the resume for many reasons. One, I want to see if they come prepared to an interview and if they bring an actual copy of their resume. And two, because sometimes the copy that I receive is coming off of the human resources, job posting, intranet that my company is using. And it may spit out the crazy, resume that somebody uploads and that the formatting isn't that great. So I want to see an actual presented resume. And then, so I'll take the resume, and obviously I'll have read through it ahead of time. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been invited in for an interview. But I'll ask questions based on the resume. And so there's several things that I've come up against in the first couple of times when I was early on.
Real quick, do you care if I piggyback off that real fast?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Always bring extra copies of your resume to an interview. Because sometimes HR only prints off 2 copies and there's 5 people in the room. So right there on the spot. Print it on nice paper because that'll leave an impression as well. And 2, interviews are nerve-wracking. You'll have it right there for your own reference as well.
Absolutely. And they have this crazy stuff now. It's called resume paper. It's really kind of cool. It's heavyweight paper. It's either ivory or white. Either one is fine. But printing it on regular copy paper just is not the desired effect you're going for. Yeah. So by all means, I'm going to continue with my story, but jump in.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, this is good, man. Like I said, this is going to be like
you're the guest, man. You're the guest.
This is straight back and forth, man.
Interrupt whenever you want.
Yep, absolutely. So the first thing I asked her is, I asked her a couple of questions, leading questions, and I realized that she was unaware of anything that was even on her resume. And that's a first indicator to me that she had somebody else write her resume, whether it's a family friend or actually paid for a service to write her resume, whatever the case may be. But she, obviously it was her resume, it had her name on it, but she was unaware of anything that was actually written on her resume. You seen that much?
Honestly, I've seen that a handful of times, especially here recently. We interviewed a guy today, and kind of our interview process is we give a corporate overview, then we ask you to explain your resume, then we open it up for dialogue, and then we do a quick security screen, and then we send you on your way. But so many people are like, hey, go over your resume with us. And that's like the toughest question that they're asked, it seems like, because whether it's canned or whether they can't speak to it or they want to jump around and only talk about certain key points, like, definitely know your resume. Be prepared for that question.
So it's pretty clear to you if somebody writes their own resume or has somebody else write it for them?
Oh, I think you can tell very easily.
Yeah. And
when you have a resume that uses, $1 million words and the person talks at a $10 level, which, I do. So my book and resume all reads the way I talk because I want it to come off authentic and genuine. Because in my opinion, when you don't come off authentic and genuine in an interview, it's over. And your interview starts with your resume.
Right. So many people do everything they can to hide blemishes and failures in their resume. When I'm reviewing resumes, I actually look for things that I'm looking for somebody that's being real and authentic and transparent, because nobody has a perfect career, right? I mean,
absolutely. You got to own that shit.
You got to own it. So what do you look for when you're reviewing a resume? I mean, just not just that in particular, but in general, what are the things that you're looking for? Like, not just, grammatical type stuff or structure, but like the stuff that recruiters and hiring managers look for. Like, let us in on some of these secrets here.
Yeah, like on my resume, right, there's a time I did 4 months at one place. Huge red flag if I was reading my own resume. I simply put in parentheses, the contract ended. So they look at it, it looks bad, but it doesn't look like a failure. It's, the contract ended.
Right.
And I expect, I own my own mistakes. There's some, like that I know is going to come up in conversation in an interview. And I've got a very well prepared, semi-rehearsed, explanation as to what was going on and why that contract ended and why it wasn't renewed. And like I said, you just got to own those little blemishes on your resume and then be prepared to explain them and then be prepared to what you learned from it and how you're not going to make that same mistake if it's a mistake, or, what you took from that experience and moving forward, right. What you learned from it.
One of the common questions I ask that people stumble on is I ask them, why are they wanting to leave their current place? So if they're currently employed, excuse me. So if they're currently employed somewhere and they're interviewing with me for a different job, one of the questions I like to ask is, why are you looking for a career change, or why are you looking at leaving the company that you are currently at, or something to that effect. And a lot of people struggle to answer that question.
I do. We see that all the time. And you're either going to get a lie, which you can, as an interviewer, you can catch pretty quickly, or they're going to, slam their old company, which I never recommend doing because towns are small and industries are small. Word will get back.
And people usually talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 9 times out of 10, when we interview somebody, I know somebody that knows them, or I know a friend of a friend type situation. And, we're looking for referrals and references.
So what's the best type of answer that you like to hear people say when asked that question?
I like just honest, blunt stuff. Like, I'm not being challenged. I need something to grow into. I'm stalled. I've kind of, hit the max for this position, and there's no other avenues to grow.
And so
my boss is an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if that's it, explain the conflict. Say, my boss and I are having some struggles. This is what's going on. This is what I've done to try to improve them.
Right, because a lot of times I find, especially with veterans, that's a big thing. They just don't mesh with the team or the company or whatever. Mm-hmm. My favorite question in an interview. Oh, go ahead.
And because teams are completely different in the corporate world, it's not like battle buddies in the Army where
absolutely
I'm going to cover for you and we're both not going to get in trouble.
No,
unfortunately, that's not how most people operate in a corporate
Pretty much, I'm going to throw your ass under the bus. So the heat's off of me. So.
If I can make you look bad and it makes me look good, that's a win for me in the corporate world. I think so many veterans struggle with just a realization that you're not going to have a dude willing to take a bullet for you in a corporate job like you do in the military.
Very few. My favorite question is always, what is your greatest weakness?
I definitely have one for that.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? And sometimes it's not, especially nowadays, it's not asked as much.
Oh, but I love I ask that all the time.
Oh, I do all the time. And I love watching people squirm.
The one answer I hate the most is when they say, oh, my biggest weakness is I'm an overachiever, and sometimes that can get in the way of this, that, or the other one is attention to detail is one of my greatest. It's like they're instead of answering the question, they're trying to make a positive seem like they're the worst negative, and it just doesn't. It's not real, man. It's not authentic.
Absolutely, and someone I'm a workaholic and all that stuff. That's a lie. I mean, we all show up to work to get paid, and so my personal answer to that is I'm terrible with short-term memory. However, whenever you see me, I have a notebook.
Right.
And that is my solution to my weakness. Down. Yeah, because I know 30 seconds later, I'm not going to remember what we just talked about.
Right.
But there's the problem. There's the solution. So it's still my biggest weakness, but I found a way that I don't, fall behind my peers and turn into a shitty employee by this weakness.
Right.
Now, what's your feelings about people towards the end of an interview? I always offer the candidate an opportunity to ask me questions at the end, just to see, not that I really care about what the question is necessarily. I'm interested more in the types of questions that they ask me as the interviewer. So, for example, I want to see if their questions are, what hours does this position start, or how many vacation days do you offer, or what's the compensation look like? If they're asking me questions that are inappropriate during this phase of the interview or the hiring process, that's a huge red flag for me. I would rather them ask questions about, the company culture and development opportunities and ways that they can get involved in the community of the company, and things like that. So it really kind of, by opening up or turning the table, so to speak, and asking the candidate what questions they have for me, it really says a lot about where they are in their way of thinking about this particular opportunity.
Interviews go both ways, and I think that's something that TAPS completely failed on, is go out there, get a job. Not every job's going to be right for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the same way the company's interviewing you to see if you'd be a good fit for them, you need to be interviewing the company to see if they're a good fit for you and what you have going on in your life. And honestly, somebody asked me on the first interview when I opened it up for questions about compensation or benefits, that's probably going to be the end of the conversation.
Yep.
In my eyes, you're not there for the right reasons, right? Like you said, culture, or, what activities does the company participate in outside of work?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you guys have a foundation? Do you guys have charities you support? What do you do for the community? Like, those are the questions I like to see. Or how many, like, just day-to-day type questions of what actually happens inside the building that's not work-related. Is there a lot of interpersonal conflicts? Are there this? Or how do you guys deal with this type situation?
What would you say, in your experience, what's the number, and Bennett, this question is for both of you. In your guys' you can answer separately, but in your guys' opinion, what's the number one challenge that people in general have with their corporate employment? What's the number one hang up or issue that you hear? Now, what I'm saying is not just getting away from the hiring and interviewing and resumes, getting away from that. Just think about your jobs right now, where you're working right now. What are some of the biggest bitches and complaints that your coworkers have about the company?
I've got my biggest thing that I run into is people not doing their freaking jobs, like literally worrying more about the politics of and I work in the government sector, so it's a little different. But yet still huge, the largest employer in the country, let's be honest. So it's actually people concerned more with the interagency politics and the jockeying for position and actually getting work done. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
And I see it constantly. I mean, it's actually frightening.
So is that what everybody standing around the water cooler is bitching about? Is that?
No, that's the real problem.
Yes.
But what they're bitching about is usually, it really depends. It's so niched out. So you'll hear people in this sector, bitch about their boss. Uh-huh. And there's a couple. It's what it is. A lot of it's the red tape. It's all the red tape. It's all the hoops that you have to jump through just to help a vet.
Yeah.
That's the biggest gripe.
Is anybody providing solutions, or are they just bitching to?
No, they're just bitching. They're just bitching.
Right. Yeah. What about where you work?
Because they're too invested in the game. They're not going to rock the boat.
Right.
To actually to put themselves on the chopping block to make a change. But that is slowly moving with leadership changes. So who knows? I just hope for better days. That's all I have to say.
Right.
No, I get it. Our biggest issue right now is, I work in our corporate office. We have about 30 employees here that sit in our corporate office on a daily basis. And we have a lot of people that sit off-site at customer locations. And it's always the perception issue that we struggle with is, if we cater in lunch because everybody in the corporate office is working through lunch and we're having a working meeting, they see that as, oh, you guys get lunches catered every day. Like, no, we're actually working here, guys, trying to keep you guys all employed and, with the great benefits that you have. So the perception of our offsite guys who actually, bring in the money and pay the bills, that they call us like party town, but in all honesty, we're all putting in, 50, 60 hours a week to ensure that they still have their jobs. And you can try to communicate that all day long, but perception is just such a hard thing to overcome once people have something in their mind.
Because perception's reality, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
In my company, it's communication, right? A lot of people complain about the lack of communication, particularly from the management down to its employees. And so the reason I bring this up, right? So we got three distinct different businesses and industries, and three very different yet very common things that you may hear of those you listening to this right now with your own company. And so it's important, and the reason I bring this up is these are the things we struggle with in our everyday business today. And you can think back at other companies or other positions that you've held at other organizations or whatever, and you can think of what was the things that people were bitching about then. They may be the same, they may be different. But going into an interview, chances are those are probably some of the very similar things that organization's also struggling with. Like, for example, if I'm interested in leaving my company, and one of the biggest problems that I have is the lack of communication with my manager, or the lack of communication and understanding what my expectations are of me, right? Through that lack of communication. Then when I go into this interview and like to your point, Nick, you're also interviewing the company to see if it's a right fit for you. The last thing I want to do is walk into another company that has another issue with communication, another issue with managers not being open and candid with their employees. So one of the questions I may ask is, especially if I'm sitting down across the table from the hiring manager, the person that I would potentially be working for, I may ask a question like, could you describe for me how you communicate with your employees and how you develop them in their careers or help them achieve goals that they've set for themselves? Like, how often do you meet with your team or do one-on-ones? If the manager says, we really don't do those, then if you're leaving one company because of a lack of communication, the last thing you want is to walk right into another company where there's no communication, right? So it really is about, it's more than just paycheck, folks. A lot of people go from one company to the next because they're looking for a promotion or looking to make more money. At the end of the day, though, making more money, that's nice. But if you go to a job every day that you just can't stand and you wish you were somewhere else, it really doesn't matter how much money you're making, does it?
Not really. And honestly, those questions that you just laid out based off the communication issues, like, that's huge from a hiring manager standpoint. I'll be like, oh man, this person is obviously really interested in how we do business. They're interested in the position. They obviously have some goals and aspirations, and they want to know how we operate. That'll set you, that one question will set you apart from the crowd.
Mm-hmm. You still there, Bennett? Did we lose you?
I'm still there. I had it muted. I'm sitting here talking to myself. So you actually have someone that has put due diligence into what they do, that they've actually done research, they've done recon, set it up so they actually look halfway intelligent. I mean, even if you don't give a shit, at least do it. Jesus.
Yeah. And those questions, that Eddie just asked, shows me that person does some self-reflection, and they know what they want, and they know what they expect, and that speaks volumes to a person's character in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's huge.
And it's funny too, because the last person I talked to I was coaching him, he was going to an interview, and he went through, this was one of my mentees on Veterati, and he went to an interview. We touched base afterwards, and I was like, so how did it go? And he told me that he felt that the interview went well. He was not sure exactly what they were looking for, but he felt good about it. And then he got an email shortly thereafter saying that basically the typical, thank you for your time, thank you for coming in and interviewing, but we've decided to not pursue you as a candidate in this position any further, or something like that, right? The typical HR jargon that you'd get. And he was pretty disappointed about it. And I was like, so, did you get anything out of that? And he goes, you know what? He goes, I didn't get anything out of that but a ton of experience. I was just like, just hearing him say those words, I had a pause for a minute. I'm like, say that again? He goes, I didn't get anything. He goes, I didn't get nothing out of it except for a ton of experience.
And that is worth gold.
It is, man. It is. No matter how many interviews you go to or how many people you phone interview or in-person interview or talk to about a position, if getting the acceptance letter isn't the mark of success, in my opinion. That may be your end goal, but the mark of success is putting yourself out there, taking those chances, getting that experience, because it's only going to help you understand exactly what it is you want in a career, in a job. Let's face it, you working 40 hours a week, you end up building relationships. You end up spending more time with people you work with than you do your own family. And that's nothing to be taken lightly. It just isn't.
Yeah, no, my wife and I had that conversation right before I left jobs about a year and a half ago is, I spend more time at the office than I do with my 2 kids and my wife. Like, I need to like these people. I need to be able to function with them. And I think so many people, like you said, just look for that acceptance letter. I can't stress this enough. You have to make sure that company's a good fit for you and your personality.
Amen.
For sure.
So we're running out of time here, Nick, but give us some quick tips, guidance, just through your own experience. It could come out of your book, whatever the case may be. Just some takeaways. I don't know if you know this, but our Friday episodes they're called Attack Fridays, and attack is an acronym because if we can't make things into acronyms, then what fun is it anyway, right?
So I agree 100%.
So attack is an acronym that stands for actionable tips, tricks, and coachable knowledge. And so this week is your opportunity to let our listeners know, let them in on some actionable tips, tricks, and coachable knowledge. So take it away.
Yeah, my biggest one is get involved in whatever you're comfortable in. Go join a board of a nonprofit or volunteer. Just get active in your community. Because my last 2 jobs came from, I knew somebody, they called me up. I think that's huge. You have to, get out in the community and network. Another thing is take your time and do your due diligence. So many people will just send a cookie cutter resume to 5 different companies. That extra 5-10 minutes per resume, tweak it to the job and to the company, will definitely set you guys apart. And then be active in the interview. Don't just sit there and answer questions. If they ask you an open-ended question, dive in there. Explain your story. Sell yourself to these people. And don't just leave it at yes and no.
Very cool, man.
Very cool.
I got to ask, are you calling from the Amazon?
No, is it windy?
No, you got birds?
Oh, no, I'm actually sitting on my back deck. I live in
That's
Ohio.
Awesome. Yeah,
no Amazon.
It's
awesome.
Toucan Sam, man. Yeah,
we do live out in the country, though. I'm sorry about that, guys.
No, it's okay. It's all good.
Problem.
We get dogs barking, cats meowing.
Yeah. God. Was that your dog or her dog?
That was her dog, man.
Oh my God, bro. Anyway, yeah. I love it.
Yeah, we're keeping it real, man. Very cool.
I love it. We keep it real.
So this was a very different interview, Nick. This really wasn't. I wouldn't classify this as an interview. More of just like
a little workshop.
Yeah, a little workshop, man. Get together and just shoot the shit. So anytime you want to come back on, man, and peel off a topic that you want to dig into, by all means, let me know. The listeners.
When does your book release?
It's already released.
It's been out for about a year.
Yeah.
Jesus, look at me.
I still owe you a copy, man. I haven't got it in the mail yet. I'm sorry.
That's all good.
Yep.
Email me your address. I'll get those in the mail hopefully tomorrow.
Will do.
Right.
And I'm gonna take a peek at it, and then might even offer it up. Get an extra one. I'll get an extra one. Is it? Yeah, it's available on Amazon. Click here to order.
You want to do a giveaway?
Yeah, I want to do a giveaway for somebody in the audience. We'll come up with some type of a giveaway, some type of like a contest or something.
Yeah, we'll do it, and I'll tell them it's only read once.
I love it. I'll send you guys a couple extras.
All right.
Are you guys located together? Or?
No.
No. He lives in New York. I live in New Hampshire.
All right, awesome. Yeah, if I have your address, Eddie.
Yeah, that's good. He can't read anyway, so.
Yeah.
I'll drop a couple of the journals in as well that we just released.
Yeah, talk to us about the journals real quick.
Yeah, so the journal, we just kind of mix, like, my whole book came from a journal, and I think there's some power in documenting stuff.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
And nobody really knows how to journal. Hell, I don't, even though I wrote a journal. But it's kind of guided, just these same topics. It's all about setting goals. So you start off with your 10-year goal, and you break it down into monthly goals. And then every day, what did you do? Did this help you achieve a goal? And we all have lofty goals, and it's overwhelming. Hey, I want to be worth $10 million in 10 years. You know, but what do I do today to get me there? Or, you know, whatever anybody's goals are. I guess what kind of differentiates our journal, because I don't like copying anybody else, is we mix personal and professional together. So everything on the left-hand side of the journal is personal. Everything on the right-hand side is professional. Because if one of those lives are out of whack, the other one's going to be out of whack as well.
That's cool, man. That's very cool. And you just released that. Is that also available on Amazon?
Yeah, it came out about a month ago. It was a crazy idea I had, and we pulled it off in about 4 weeks.
Hell yeah.
So the ones you guys will get will have the first edition air, because we left a word off on the back page.
All right. That's all good, man. Now, I'm looking on your website. I don't see the journal. Is that not on there yet?
No, because I'm terrible at internet.
Oh, okay. No big deal.
Copy that.
Then you and Bennett are in great company then.
Stop it.
I love
it. So good. I'm so good on the internet. I'll rape your freaking whole website.
So, all right, really quick. I got to throw Bennett under the bus here for a second. So, Bennett and I, we have a secret podcast, but that's all we're going to say about it on this show because it's secret. Anyway, so yesterday's episode released, and he completely forgot to throw the intro on the episode.
I did figure out what happened.
Yeah, I bet you did.
I uploaded the raw episode.
Yeah.
Versus the one that the mix down.
Right.
The one you spent all the time on.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it only took me about 3 minutes to do it, and then, just totally screw it up. So, whatever.
Me and my son were on our way into work this morning, and I
the other 13 episodes are still good.
Yeah, I put it on, and he was like, whoa, man. He's like, he goes, did you start it at the beginning? I was like, yeah, I thought so. And I started it again. Sure enough, no intro. I was like,
just wanted to hear my badass intro. That's right.
Yeah, it is a good
I
intro.
love it. You just got to own it.
I am going to, you, sir, will be allowed in the in-crowd of our secret podcast. So
I love it because I was a little nervous with that beginning part of the conversation. I can't come on here and just be another author because I don't have all the answers.
I'll tear your shit
I just know what works for me.
That's right, man. Hell yeah. So we're going to let you in on the secret. I'll send you a
You're okay with us, Nick.
I'll send you a link to it, brother.
I love it. Awesome. I appreciate it. And I will get those. I'll make sure those journals and books go out tomorrow.
Awesome.
Very cool.
I'll send tracking numbers and everything.
Great stuff.
I'm excited to read them and check that out. Absolutely. And I'm sure the audience would love to get, it's about keeping the shit real here, folks. And on that note, you can find all of the show notes for everything we talked about, except for the secret podcast, in the show notes page for this episode. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. And hey, why don't you come be a part of our community over at Change Your POV Squad Facebook group? You can check out all the craziness that we have going on over there. And we're even going to put up links to Nick's book and journal over there as well when this gets closer to airing. And yeah, man, love to see you there. Nick, where can people find out more about you?
On my not so updated website, flleadership.com, or anybody can email me anytime if there's anything I can do for you guys. Nick@nickripplinger.com.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir, very much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yep. All right, guys. Until next time. Hey, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. And let's talk about what we're going to do to give away Nick's free book and journal. So here's what we're going to do. Today is the release date of this episode, July 7th, 2017. You've got 2 weeks, so on July 21st is when this little competition ends. Here's what we're going to do. Head on over to iTunes and write a review for this podcast. And you can do that easily by just heading over to changeyourpov.com/review. That'll take you directly over to iTunes. You can go on there and you can leave us a good review. Once you've left us a review, take a screen capture, a screenshot of your review, and head on over to the Change Your POV Squad Facebook group and paste the picture of your review in the Facebook group. And I will put the link to the Facebook group in the show notes page for this episode, as well as the link to the review page. So you can go over to the show notes page and all the links are there for you. And what we're going to do is in 2 weeks, so July 21st, we are going to select a winner, and I'm going to get in contact with you, and we're going to mail you your own copy of Frontline Leadership and the Frontline Leadership Journal. So there you have it, folks. Again, it's really quick. changeyourpov.com/review. Leave a review. Take a screen capture of that review. Post it in the Facebook group. And in 2 weeks, July 21st, we're going to select the winner, send you out your copies. So there you have it, folks. You have a fantastic rest of your week.